Hello, YouTube. Welcome to Gas Masks and Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Metal Madness Jeff, and today I'm joined by, in my opinion, one of the most important musicians to emerge from the second wave of the black metal scene from the early 90s. He is co-founder of the band Enslaved, where he has led them as the primary songwriter on an unparalleled progressive journey towards becoming possibly the most successful and highly respected band from this genre and era of music. While many of these bands and artists were concerned lyrically and thematically with nihilism and anti-death and anti-Christianity, my guest and his musical partner, Grutle Kjellson, forged a path focused on Norse mythology and the duality of relationships between mankind and the world around them. Yes, esoteric subjects, of course, but with universal meaning and importance. They've done that through a foundation of metal music that has become consistently more challenging and dense as they approach the release of their 16th album, Heimdall, which is out March 3rd on Nuclear Blast. Of course, I'm talking about the one, the only Ivar Bjørnson. Ivar, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
We'll
It's good to
pretend that
be
we didn't talk to each other already.
sure. Never seen you before.
How did you end up here? I'm not even sure how you ended up here. So yeah, that's actually a good question that I just asked there. How you ended up here, really, I have to thank one person real quickly right off the bat before we get started, and that is Austin Lunn of Panopticon for the introduction of Ivar to me back in September. Because without that, I'm not certain that this would have occurred. So thank you very much to the great Austin Lunn. I think you have a lot of respect for as well.
Absolutely, we're good friends, and luckily he's over at my parts, and I take a tiptoe over the Atlantic and meet up with him in the
Yeah,
U.S.
yeah. I guess you saw him back in July. July, I would assume, right?
Yeah, Fire in the
For,
Mountains,
for Finding the
and
Mountains,
then he
which
actually
we're gonna talk about that too.
and he came to Bergen for the
At the
Beyond the Gates.
gates. Yeah, or
Beyond the
beyond the
Gates
gates.
Festival.
Yeah. So before we dig deep into this thing, and first of all, let me ask you, how were your holidays and how are you doing in general?
Doing great. The holidays were pretty awesome. With I got some kids, and they love the holidays, and yeah, it's, I think it's more relaxing. In one sense, it's more stressful because the kids get up early and all that stuff.
Sure.
Uh, but
Now, your
on the
kids
other hand,
older or younger, or like teenagers or preteens or
preteens, yeah, eight
preteens?
and
Okay,
11.
8 and 11. Okay, okay.
But on
It
the
gets
other
more
hand, you don't have to
interesting.
go. Yeah, on the other hand, you don't have to go around scratching your head like thinking to try to find some meaning in the whole thing. You just have to make sure your kids are happy.
Oh yeah. I have 25 and 27. So I'm sure you've heard this many times before, but the timeline starts to move much more quickly. And you're away a lot, I assume too. So that's probably a difficult thing. So appreciating those moments and being with them has got to be very important to you, I would assume.
Absolutely, that was one of the lessons from the pandemic that's luckily over now.
Yeah.
In one sense, it's luckily over. In the other sense, I'm glad for the lessons I got from it. And one of them was to work on being more present during the times when you're actually at home.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to say. I think we all could be far more present in our lives and far more appreciative of the little things that often we just really aren't. And I have a personal situation. We won't get into it, but I have a personal medical situation that makes me very appreciative of the things that are going on around me now. So, like I hadn't seen my daughter in 3 years. She lives down in North Carolina, Asheville, and I hadn't seen her in 3 years, and it was just so overwhelming to spend even just 2 days with her. Every minute I had a chance, despite how I
Yeah,
felt, I got up and went out the door and went, "We're going to go do stuff," and it was
awesome.
super meaningful to me.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how about we go backwards in time a little bit and we talk about your formative years, and by that I mean maybe your childhood into your teens. And I'm going to pretend right now. I'm going to pretend that I never watched the documentary Heimwegen. Did I pronounce that right?
Yep. Perfect. So okay, that's
Okay.
the premise. Should I pretend I didn't watch it either?
Pretend
I
you
guess
didn't watch it and
makes sense.
pretend you weren't even involved in it.
Oh wow, okay, that's some heavy meta shit going on here, man. Let's try.
It's time travel. We're getting into time travel shit here. So, but actually, for those that don't know, there is an absolutely amazing documentary that was done by Dag Olav Husas.
Yes.
Okay, he did this incredible. I think it was done during 2020 or 19.
A little bit of both, but I think mostly 2020.
Okay, so that's I believe it's a 12-part series, and if you've not seen it, it is absolutely amazing. Truly one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, and it starts from the beginning to the present times pretty much, and it's on TV Haugland channel on
Yeah,
YouTube. Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm doing
The
my
most
best with the
local television of all times.
Yeah, so I mean, is that, by the way, is that exclusively just on like their property? Like, could you release that as a DVD or anything like that, or any plans for that?
Uh, I don't know, to be honest. We didn't talk about that, but those guys are like, they're sweethearts. You know, they're really are dedicated to making the best out of local television. I think that's a really cool thing. It's like the metal magazines, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
It's kind of
it
like
doesn't
you
really
say, it's
matter.
almost like a fanzine, right? Or something like that, kind of only in video form. Yeah. But
Exactly.
those
It
people
doesn't
that
matter.
haven't seen it, get out and see it because it is super well worth seeing. There's a little delay with us, so I'm gonna talk and then I'll be quiet and let you talk. Because I got a slight delay on my end. That's why I'm overlapping you a little bit. I apologize for that. Okay,
Also,
formative year. Tell me about your first memories of music and how the exposure to music really affected you from, you know, whether it was as a child or as a teenager or whatever. We don't have to talk about metal or hard rock or anything. Like for example, for me, the first memories I have of music is Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Water, Carole King Tapestry, stuff like that. It was the early 70s stuff because I was an early 70s kid. So what do you remember? Any specific memories tied in with any specific artists or experiences?
I think, of course, there's the stuff that we're listening to on car rides, holidays in Norway. I guess like all over the world. When I was a kid, early '80s, were spent a lot at the back in the back seat of cars, right, going places, and we listened to these cassettes, and yeah, there was kids' music. I enjoyed music, but very early on, I think yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I got into classical music at the age of 2, like people like to do, which doesn't really make sense. But
Right.
around the age of 5, 6, I had the same experience as a lot of kids. It turned out Grutle had the same thing. He was just a little bit older. There was this Norwegian television show on Saturdays that like the kids and the youth who like to watch. It's about this family, a crazy street, with other crazy families. But the main family, there was this teenage daughter, and I guess Grutle and those slightly older boys were looking at her a lot. For me, the
Uh-huh.
highlight was every episode would have a thing about Kiss in it because that was her thing, Kiss. She loved Kiss, especially
Okay.
Gene Simmons. Like, how crazy is that for Norwegian children's television production?
That's weird.
I guess they use stand-ins or something because or who knows. But some episodes she would be dream that she was taken out of the front row and up on stage and like dancing to whatever they were playing.
Oh, cool.
And there would be small snippets of her daydreaming about Kiss live and things like that, and that just hit me like a 10-ton hammer. I was like, that is so awesome. That just the band, the thing with the band, those guys
Right.
up on stage making all that noise and people listening and so on. So that Christmas, I think, the year I was 6, my granddad got me a cassette version of Dynasty.
Ah,
And yeah, I spent a lot of time around the stereo after that. With as long as I had a headset on, my dad had one of these like high fidelity headsets. And I just
mhm.
loved the sound, like the closed sound, the
Right.
crispiness, and I was just sitting there all day listening to. Uh, for some reason, also Bruce Springsteen was a big thing for me there. I still
Oh,
like
really?
him, but I thought that was like really powerful. I like the guitar sound. And then it just took off from there, I guess. A buddy of mine brought me Wasp, because somebody told him that was really tough, and they were wearing
Which Wasp album? Do you remember?
The Last Command.
Oh yeah, great album. Great album.
So we're listening to that, and then yeah, I'm jumping the gun here, and then it went from there to my dad accidentally on a business trip, thinking, oh, he likes this hard rock thing, and then he just grabbed something out of the VHS shelf in London and gave it to me without looking at it too much, still in the plastic bag. And I'm like staying up watching this, and it's Venom, 10 Dates of Hell. I'm like 9 something, and I'm like, this is the shit.
This is the shit. Yeah.
Skulls, inverted crosses, smashing the basses, screaming Satan. All right, this is the life.
So did you pick up guitar right around that time then?
Yeah, just before that, actually, around 8. My dad was he passed away in 2015. That hence the past tense.
Mm-hmm.
He was a bit of a campfire guy. So on weekends, they were having old friends over, filling up the living room with 68ers, as we call them here, the hippies.
Okay.
Now in all working in public sector and enjoying their wine on a Saturday evening, and him pulling out the guitar and doing Bob Dylan songs. And again, I got really drawn towards this concept of like the source of music or whatever, the entertainment or whatever. It just seemed elevated and like a great thing to be doing. So I asked him if I could play with him, and my hands were really tiny. So I got to play just the bass lines on his other acoustic guitar that he had standing around. And then one day he found in his cupboard like this old learn to play guitar, like the letter thing, that you would be sent this instruction little, like a magazine.
Like a Mel Bay primer or something like that?
Yeah, it was like 13 or 14
Right.
edition, like magazines.
Right.
And it was obviously something he'd gotten from some older dude. It was a guy from the 50s, I guess, in a sharp dressed suit.
Yeah, that sounds like Mel Bay.
And he's like, first we're gonna play this traditional tune, Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley. And I would just be alone in my room and try and do these chords, which I got wrong a lot of the times, but they sounded really cool. And I guess that's how the weird chords started out, the whole thing there.
So guitar was the first thing? You weren't forced to do the piano lessons or the cello in school or anything like that, or?
Oh, a lot worse. I wasn't forced, but I enlisted myself in the school's brass band because I wanted to play music.
Yeah.
I played a lot of like Beatles, but not the cool ones, like the lame ones, Obladi, Oblada, and that kind of stuff. And you're always playing on the backbeat, like ba, 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 like the rhythm guitarists of the brass band. On this alt horn, as it's called. But I was really lucky. The conductor, who was in charge of the brass band, he was genuinely music lover, and he generally wanted the best for kids. So when I approached 10, I believe it was, he phoned my parents and said, this guy, he's really into music. He loves sound, but I think he needs something that's a bit more sonic and noisy, because every break we have, he'll go and find like cymbals or a gong, anything that makes a lot of noise, and starts hammering on it. He just wants loud sounds. So I would actually recommend you take him out of the brass band and buy him an electric guitar. And that's what they did.
So how old are you there?
That was just before I turned 10, yeah.
Okay. And then you get your first electric and an amp, I'm assuming a cheap amp, right? And you start banging out sounds, and within a year or two, how do you meet up with Grutle? Is that through the community center thing? Was that what it was?
Yeah, that's now things starts happening quite fast. I'm already sort of established myself, thinking like I'm going to be a metal dude. And that's what I was, I was heavily into Anthrax at the time. I would my teacher started going a bit crazy from like every opportunity. There will be Anthrax and the song "I'm the Man," which I just thought was both
Oh yeah.
really catchy and very funny, hilarious. So there would be, if you have a special project about anything, I would find a reason to present, come with a portable cassette player
Right.
and play that, and just like nodding, headbanging, and it'll be like, it would be nice if you could do something that doesn't involve loud music at some point.
Right.
But I was caught, and then Anthrax played in Oslo. They were on tour. They had Suicidal Tendencies as a support, and I was really lucky. My dad, he'd been to a lot of concerts in his youth, so he took me and two friends, Trim actually, which I
Oh,
already
okay.
knew
Right. Kai Johnny.
in my hometown. He was vacationing there at his uncle's place just next to where I lived,
Right.
and a third friend, and yeah, we drove to Oslo and saw them and drove back, and that was really, it really set my mind on, okay, let's start a metal band. So I got Trim to join me, and we started this band called Obnoxious, which was
Oh.
thrash metal, like Bay Area, very influenced.
Okay. Right.
Metallica.
What year are we talking here? Probably 85, 6?
When? Oh, later, man.
Yeah.
I'm a young dude. Now
Oh,
we're
it's later.
89, 90.
Okay, so almost 90 then. Okay, so thrash is already kind of not
Oh, yeah,
it's
87,
it's common, it's established, and it's well established. Yeah.
88 maybe. Yeah, that's more correct.
Okay. Right.
Yes, so I didn't get any of those like classic albums when they came out. I'm not going to
Right.
pretend to do that.
Right.
The only one I really hit the hammer was with, literally the hammer was Hammerheart Bathory. I got that one when it came out in
Okay.
'89. But anywho, so we started this band, and we were rehearsing at this community house. By this time, my parents are divorced, so I'm at my father's during weekends, and he lives in this little town with this great community. It was called the Old Slaughterhouse.
Right.
So that's pretty appropriate, for
Yeah, for
thrash and death
kids.
metal bands. Yeah.
Oh, right.
So we're in the basement rehearsing there, and at the same time, I'm really, just looking all the time for something that's more. I heard Creator
Mhm.
and the Norwegian band Kadaver, which was really early on with their death metal sound in our 88, 89, approaching 90. And I heard them at this Norwegian demo show on national radio. And that was the first time I heard the down-tuned guitars and the growling and stuff. And I started like, it would be great to do something less light-footed than what we're doing with this thrash metal thing, right? But yeah, who to do that with? So we just kept playing, and then I walked past the community house during the daytime, a Saturday. It was just down the street from where my dad lived, and I hear this pretty intense music, more of a double bass drums, fast, kind of German thrashy. And I go and look in the windows, and it's this band called Witchhammer. Have you heard of them? Norwegian?
Yes.
And they were on tour for their album 1487.
Okay.
Super album. And they're sound checking, right? And they see this little chubby kid jumping to like see in the window for the sound check. And I guess they knew they were in a small town, few tickets, so they went outside and like, are you aware it's all ages show? So if you want to come tonight, that would be great. Just the $50 or whatever, the Norwegian kroners,
Right. Okay.
like $4 or $5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I go home and ask my dad. It's an early show, all ages, 5 minutes distance from the house. Yeah, he'd already been to the Anthrax concert, and then that's when he decided and told other parents, like, these metal people, that's where you can be, just relax. If your kids start hanging in that scene, you can relax. The older ones look out for the small ones.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They're like the best people. They're just there for the music.
Absolutely.
So
That's
yeah,
so cool.
that was very fortunate for me. So I go there, and there's this rowdy bunch in front of the stage, right? There's just maybe 15, 20 people, but they're all circle pitting and headbanging, and some of them even jumping from the stage. And I'm like, whoa, this is some grown-up stuff happening here. But I tried to like get a peek, And then one of the most rowdy people, like, he jumps too high, so he passes the first row, second one, and just crashes into me head to head, and I pretty much but just pass out. I wake up at this guy with like this rumblings, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" He's like being way too polite because he thought it was a girl. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." And that's when I met Grutle for the first time.
So he actually knocked you out and headbutted you by
Yep.
knocking you out. Have you told that story before? Because that's an awesome story.
Yeah, it's when people actually ask how we met, they have to. And then so he's, "Oh, you're a dude." That's really so cool. But yeah, I guess he wasn't that interested. He was, he still had some stage diving and some tough guy business
Right.
to do. He's the Dirty Harry of the Viking metal world.
Okay. Badass, right?
He's the badass, yeah.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
then I go home and all that. So we keep rehearsing, and then it turns out Grutle and this guy Hein, who later started Theater of Tragedy.
Yep.
They're really, they're into the tape trading. They're really, getting into that scene, listening to Autopsy all day and Nihilist, Entomb, Swedish sound, all that, and they wanna start a band that's death metal, basically. They've both been also in thrash metal bands that they grew tired of. But they were missing a guitarist, right? Grutle's doing the bass, vocals, and Hein is
Drummer.
drumming, yeah. Or actually, yeah, and Grutle, he wanted to do just vocals, but he could do the bass if they found a guitarist. And then he said, yeah, somebody told him that this is really awesome guitarist is rehearsing this day. And by this time, I'd started emulating the Sunlight Studio sound, right? I got myself borrowed a pretty fat bass combo and a metal zone,
Mm-hmm.
and tuned down the guitar. So it sounded a lot like that Swedish, like mid-tone, Entombed kind of sound, yeah.
Right. Did you have an HM too?
Yes, exactly.
You did. Okay, of course you did.
It all sounded like that, and the riffing started getting pretty good, I have to say. And they stopped by outside the rehearsal room at some point. And, yeah, okay, this guy's good. Let's try and come back someday after they're done and meet up with them. And they got pretty surprised when I walked out of there with my guitar case. It's like, "It's you." And me and Grutle, it's like we're all arch enemies. Like, it's you.
Nemesis.
Yeah, the
Right?
nemesis.
Yeah.
And I guess the guy is what he's a kid still.
Yeah.
His voice hasn't dropped yet or anything, but
Yeah.
that sound. Okay, let's ask him. So they asked if I wanted to join them and form a death metal band, and I'm like, okay, yes, sure, I'm in. And yeah, started bossing around people from day one.
You started bossing people around. So that was Phobia. That was the beginnings of Phobia then.
That
Now,
was the whole thing. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I think you already answered the question though, about your parents' support. It sounded like they were extremely supportive of your choices and you sound like you were a good kid. So they trusted you and they trusted you to make the right decisions. And they were very supportive of you.
At least I think I was a cunning kid, because I realized, like, if you just do your homework first and then
Right.
ask for things afterwards, that would end up a lot more positive than the other way around.
Right. So we'll get to Phobia in a sec here real quick, because I want to get into that. What was your first concert? Was Anthrax then, if I'm assuming correctly? Like your first real concert, right?
Yeah.
And what tour was that for? Was that with Bush or was that with Joey Belladonna? Joey.
I don't know. I was just like, all I was interested in was Scott Ian.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Great rhythm guitar, man. Great rhythm guitarist. Did you, before we jump too far ahead here real quick, so you kind of realized at a very young age that you really wanted to do this as a career, even though you weren't even thinking about it probably like that. You weren't thinking like, oh, this is what I want to do when I grow up. It's just, this is what I want to do now and forward, was be a musician.
Yeah, exactly. Or more specific, like make music in a band and have a band and have that as a thing. There was never like to begin with the first band. Okay, when you're that age, you don't think long term at all, which is I guess why some of the earliest stuff from bands really have that has that characteristic and quality of like instinct, almost like instinctual sounding, and that appeal. And in later years, I'm trying to let myself be inspired by that and sort of not. It's too bad I believe that sort of childish in our society. Everything childish or youthful is sort of regarded as something you should rid yourself of.
Inconsequential.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say we'll move out because really that pretty much touched. Well, was there any other possible? I don't think there was any other possible career choice for you because you were already well on your way by the time you were 15, 16 years old in the metal musical sphere, right? I mean, you never really thought, oh, you know what, I'm going to stop when I'm 20 and go to college and become a nuclear physicist or anything, right?
Yeah, or a rocket surgeon.
Rocket surgeon, rocket appliance, if you like the Trailer Park Boys, right? Okay, so getting on to Phobia, we'll get into the chronology of bands and music here. So that was your first. You were 13 or 12 when that started, because I've seen various different. From your mouth, it came out that you were actually 12 when that started.
Let me see. So born in 77, but late in the year. 87, I'll be 10. What's 10, 11? It would be the year that I turned 13.
Okay.
And then I'm uncertain if it's before or after. So I just, 12 or 13.
So that album, well, there's two demos, right? And I have the CD version of it. I think it came out on Nuclear War Now. Am I thinking that's right? I think it is. I didn't pull my CDs for this. I got to tell you, man, the fact that you're 13 on that is mind-blowing to me because granted it's kind of caveman riffage, but the thing that's different about it that I hear. What's that?
Cave Kid,
right? Exactly. The thing that I hear in those demos, though, even as rudimentary as they were, and by the way, were they 4 or 8-track demos? Do you remember?
Which ones are we talking about? Oh yeah, the Phobia stuff.
Yeah, that's all 4-track.
No, it's actually in there was a studio between two of the rehearsal rooms. I guess they also had as a part of the thing that you could go there and record demos, or I guess maybe they trained studio people. I think it was an 8-track or something.
8-track, okay. So this is what year's Phobia now? 91, 2?
We started playing in 89, and I guess we recorded things in 90 and 91. Yeah,
90 and 91. So I'm trying to remember. I don't think ADAT was out at that point. So it was still real 8-track, right?
Yeah, it was all tapes. Yeah,
tape, right? Okay, so what I hear there, which is stunning to me, is there's a lot of really incredible ideas for such young guys, I think. And yes, it has some autopsy worship to it, and it has a little bit of entombed vibe to it, but it's not. There's some dynamics to that stuff that really, it's haunting. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah,
there's some eeriness to it.
Yeah.
And did you write all that, or did you guys write it as a group?
Yeah. Good question. I think we wrote more like songs. I wrote quite a few of the songs, and then there's like a mixture. I think Grutle had some ideas. Hein had some ideas that we brought in, but like the later stuff, it was more like bringing riffs into the rehearsal room and taping them together, like
and just expanding on them then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
More of the three of us was pretty much working out the songs together. Yeah.
So it was so it was just the three of you. It was that was it.
Yeah, we had a bass player and a lead guitarist, but they weren't really too interested in that. They liked the sound of it, so they enjoyed playing it. But yeah, it was cool during the documentary to meet the guys and hang out.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And then you guys did play you did some kind of gigs, sort of, kind of, right? There's
Yeah.
some video of you guys doing an actual. Was it like a school dance or a school type thing?
Yeah, I think it was the first like public, if you can call it that. It was a talent contest
Okay,
in municipality where Grutle lived. So we played with Phobia. I remember we were inspired by I think it was Dark Throne. They were still on their death metal thing, but they had this thing. It wasn't exactly corpse paint. It was like just black around the eyes,
right.
kind of like ghoulish, like graveyard kind of vibe.
Hmm.
And we got these theatrical sort of what do you call that? They look like not pills, but like plastic things that you
With the
have
blood?
medicine inside.
No.
It's like the thing you chew on, and then there's blood
Right.
inside. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a capsule.
capsule.
There
That's
we go. Right, right,
time
right.
capsule. Yeah, there you go.
Hmm.
So yeah, and we would chew on those during the show, and like the blood would pour
Oh,
out.
so you did the whole blood Gene Simmons thing?
Yeah, not this like look demon like not like demonic sexy like Gene Simmons, more like we're dead,
Oh,
you know.
like regurgitating, dying, sort of the
Yeah,
to sell that thing. So it's actually interesting. You just gave me a great segue into my next question, which was, you know, the death metal style that you originally started to craft with Phobia fairly quickly moved into more of a, and I know you guys don't like the black metal tag because, and we're going to talk about that next question, but there was black metal certainly that influenced you, of course.
yeah.
And so the black metal Viking style of music aesthetic, where and when and how do you recall, and maybe you don't recall, but how did it start to morph into that from the death metal stylings of the autopsy like Phobia stuff?
I guess we felt me and Grutle, we started discussing, and because Hein he was also planning on, he knew a bit ahead that he was going to move to the US.
Hmm.
Um, I think that was made clear late in the 90s or something. And the two other guys, great guys. Kai, who played the lead guitar, he became in the mid 90s. He became one of the biggest like EDM stars in Norway, making
Oh,
like
that's right.
only.
That was in the special. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
And the other guy Snorre dedicated his life to becoming pretty much a hooligan, a football supporter,
Okay.
traveling the world, getting into
Nice.
bar brawls, and he was such a tiny guy back at that time, and now I met him. It's like, whoa,
He
he
got
made
big
me
like
more
you.
support. Yeah, yeah. He's I'm glad he's a friend.
Because you're tall. How tall are you? Like 6'3", 6'4"?
I don't know and oh shit, it's 190 in the centimeters thing.
I'm not gonna have any idea. I'm American. I'm stupid. I don't know that kind of stuff.
I don't think we're either of us stupid. It's just like we live in a world where we still haven't decided on a common measure system.
Exactly.
Pretty
Yeah.
simple. So let's just say I'm pretty tall.
Yeah,
Um,
you are pretty tall. Yeah.
but not. We met. Oh yeah, I'm just going off there. Hung out in Peter Steele's tour bus in '95,
That guy's tall.
and then I was really small.
Yeah, exactly. That guy was really tall, no doubt about it. That we got to get back to that. Well, no, how did that happen? Like, that's so cool. Like, you were on tour with them, or he come by out there, or what?
We played we were going on this US tour in '95, right?
Hmm.
After Frost, we did a European tour, and we got these letters from a friend of ours became a friend, but a guy who knew the Absu guys were Osmos pals or something.
Hmm.
I guess that was connection. So addresses got forwarded, and we got this like, we want to bring you on a US tour. And it's pretty, I had like one phone conversation, and then they bought us tickets, sent in the mail. We fly over to New York and go on tour with Incantation and Absu. I think we were
Okay.
the second Norwegian metal band to tour the US. TNT did it in the 80s.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, it was pretty groundbreaking. We're going
And
to
you're a
one of the
very
first
young guy. You're a very young guy at this point.
17. So
Wow.
dad's all like, yeah, go and experience the world, son. And my mom's all like, oh my God, this is not going well. But
That's
Grutle's
awesome,
mother
though.
and my dad managed to it's a they should do this. It's their dream. Blah blah blah. Um, and that's how it ended up. We went there, and one of the first shows were a metal festival in New Jersey
Okay.
or somewhere. I think if Grutle was watching this, he'd be like totally red faced and going like, "You get everything wrong."
Everything
But
wrong, right? Wasn't
I guess
Milwaukee
that's
Metal Fest, though, right?
was that around at that time? I have no idea, but it was a metal
No,
fest. Like
I think that was 99, I think. Yeah.
two-story. We were one of the last bands on the like downstairs stage, like the yeah, like stage two.
Right.
And that went great. At that time, we were pretty exotic, so people are coming over to check out this Norwegian black or extreme metal, or whatever. I don't mind. How could I expect people to like? We're almost black metal. It's such a
Right.
silly definition that if people call us black metal, I just if they want to know, I'll explain.
Right. Right.
They
Right.
were
Right.
friends. We had the same influences, but we had different lyrics.
Right.
So
Exactly.
we were black metal. And at
Right.
that time, no one had the Viking concept. Before us, there was Heavy Load from Sweden, Bathory, Sweden, and I
Bathory.
guess to some extent, maybe Manowar at times, who had been dealing with this concept. And of
Yeah.
course, Canadian quality
But you guys
musicians.
never got out there with baby oil and loincloth, so did you? Or did you?
No,
Okay. I'm just thinking, did Gritla go out in a loincloth ever?
nope,
Okay.
he
All right.
didn't. Um, and I don't think maybe if he really loses it at the old age, he'll do it, but not before that.
We have to work on that. That would
Yes,
be a good tour selling point right there. So you
but
guys moved. So again, I'll tie this in. You had the unique position of being present during the, shall we call it, craziness of the development of the second wave of black metal. But what set you guys apart and made you what set you guys apart and made you steer the enslaved ship in a different direction rather than the lyrical content of attacks on Christianity, the church burning, the murders and stuff like that. What made you go, yeah, that's definitely not for us. We want to go a different direction.
I'll just finish up the festival story, just
Oh,
really
sorry.
quickly.
Yeah.
So we're playing there, and then Typo Negative was playing upstairs as the main headliner for the festival. And we're big fans, right? This is pretty much, I had like 3 tapes on that tour listening to my Walkman, and Typo Negative, The Bloody Kisses was one of them, listening to it over and over again. So we went to see them, and after the show, this friend of a friend comes and like, if you want to go and have a beer with Pete Steele, he's inviting you to the tour bus. And we're like, yes, that sounds. On the outside, we're like, oh, thank you very much. Like on the inside, we're screaming,
Yes.
screaming at the kids, like, yeah, fuck yeah. And we go on the bus, and he's there, and gives us a beer, shows a copy of the CD Frost that I have on the tour bus. He he really likes what we're doing, and we're just having a conversation, and that was great. Drunk some beers, and all of a sudden, a lot of time passed, and I guess somebody knocked on the door and said he had a meeting in the back lounge. The meeting was with a few good-looking women. So
Young
who knows?
ladies, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Who knows what kind of financial discussions they had? But we
Yeah.
went back to our van and drove off on the tour, and just thought this is pretty awesome. We got invited to stay for 2 more months in the US and open for Carnivore, but we're like, we're not gonna make it in time for school, are we? And so we pretty much spent the rest of our life going like, oh my god,
Why did we do that? Why did we make that decision?
we
That's a
never
crazy story.
we never made it like we made it into anything educated anyway. So
Right.
why didn't we just do that?
Why? Yeah. Right. Exactly. Did you maintain a friendship with Pete throughout his lifetime then, or no?
The last thing was just saying that we really appreciated it, but had some stuff we had to do, so we couldn't do Carnivore. It's pretty embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, yeah. Now I've told the story, and that's my
That's a killer story, man. That's awesome. And
thanks a lot.
you point out something I think that's very poignant about us as metalheads. We're all fanboys inside. There's
Yes,
you
all the
you
time.
cannot you cannot escape that. It just is whether you're a guy like me that's kind of on the outside looking in, I play. I don't know if you can see my ovation back there, but I play and I write, and I'm a decent guitar player, pretty decent guitar player. But I never really chased the dream. I went to college and had the kids and did the accounting guy thing. And I don't do accounting anymore, but I did. But we're all fanboys, and that's what makes
Yeah,
us as a group special, I think, really. Did you
exactly.
maintain a relationship with Pete at all until he died, or no?
No, we
No.
didn't know.
Okay. Okay.
It was
Um,
a beautiful meeting of two ships in the night.
Passing in the night. Yeah, but dude, there's not many people that could ever tell that kind of a cool story. I mean, that's one of those things that you kind of go to your grave with going, man, that really happened. That was so badass. But I do agree with you. Maybe it would have been a better idea to go on the carnivore opening slot there. That would have,
That would have been some good memories, I'm sure.
I bet. So you signed to Death Like Silence, and Viking Ligger Velde was the ninth release for DSP. Oh no, we jumped out of that. So, yeah, can you explain how that came about? Just that situation.
Right. So finding our place in that whole scene, just because your last question
Yeah,
would sort of lead into that one, that like
right.
silence. And then I promised to just go by the questions and not.
Yeah, my bad. I get excited and I want to get into the next thing because you give me an
Right.
angle to tangentially talk. I'm very ADHD, so I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that. That's cool, So my apologies.
No problem. It's just it's all connected. So yeah,
I
it's
got you.
easier.
As
So
Voivod says, we're all connected.
yes, and what the Voivod says, it's true.
Law. It's law.
Easy. So right at this time in Norway, there's a sort of there's a scene of these death metal bands. The next gig we get is outside of Bergen. It's not outside of where we lived. It was in Bergen. Hein was extremely clever, so he sent a letter to the venue in Bergen where Cadaver was playing a show. And he filled the envelope with a bunch of chocolates and sweets and said, "We're Phobia, a death metal band from 3 hours away. Can we open for Cadaver?" And I answered back, "Yes, you can." So we went there and did our first outside of town show. I had to stand on a crate, a bear crate, to get my head above the in front of stage barriers and things. It was just great, and we started meeting some people. There was a scene down there. These bands, All Funeral
Yeah.
and Amputation, which were the two bands, death metal bands, that ended up as Immortal and Bursum.
Right.
And on the east side of Norway, we got in touch with the guys from. They're playing in a band called Embryonic that morphed into Thou Shalt Suffer, and who became the Emperor guys, right?
Right. Yep.
We're all like tape trading, sending letters, and after a while, starting visiting. Grutle. We took the bus to. It was easy going by bus. There would be 5 hours to where the Emperor guys lived. Stay there for a few days, hanging out at the rehearsal room, getting older friends to buy us booze, and just
Of course.
rambling. Having a great time, and then we'd take the bus for another 3 hours into Oslo and go to Helvete, the shop Euronymous was running at the time.
Right.
And when there was shows in Oslo, or just go there to meet, the scene.
Right.
And at this time, things, started after a while around, I guess, 90, late 90s, early 91, at the same time as Phobia was sort of disintegrating. These demos from Mayhem, the demos for the Mysterious was already, or like what they did, the released songs
With Dead, the stuff with Dead.
with that, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Right.
this Freezing Moon,
Yep.
and also the rumors of Dark Throne abandoning death metal and going for this new black metal sound started circulating, and all of these bands that I mentioned were wanting to do something else. And me and Grutle, we had a talk, and we decided this was, as I remember it, one of the earliest days of May 91, that we should just form. Let's just do it and go. We're interested in doing this sound, right? This new sound that's developing. I'm not sure of the chronology, who did what exactly at what time, but we sort of, all these guys sort of, we weren't the first, but I think it was Immortal was very early on, from Amputation into Immortal. And Bursum started, tapes started circulating, Emperor, and then I guess us. We didn't have a name, but we decided let's focus on Norse mythology, because that was something that we were really interested in. We had, both of us, with these academic parents, had books of a variety of cultures, African, Native American, whatever. They were very like, oh, open, written, learn about the world, but luckily also the local history, which would be the Viking history.
Right.
And that really fit the concept, and the sound, we thought. And it sort of, it was ours. And of course, it would mean that we wouldn't be part of the inner sort of the core of what was happening in the black metal scene, because that was sort of strictly defined by a satanic ideology. And we
the satanic and the anti-Christianity and all
Absolutely.
the nihilistic sort of viewpoint of the world and everything around. Yeah.
And they were our friends. I know that some people, not necessarily in the of the bands, but some people around in the scene were a bit skeptical, like, what are these like flowery dudes hanging out, because there's also love and poetry and horrible shit in Norse mythology. They're not evil enough to be part of this.
Right.
I guess we're like, okay, don't like us.
So you guys weren't sketchy enough, but they let you still hang out. Is that kind of it?
I guess the guys that actually had something interesting going for them, the musicians that we had common ground.
Yeah.
So I guess they wouldn't mind that we're goofing around and quoting Monty Python as often as Aleister Crowley. They would accept that, because we would develop a sound that was also, I guess, respected or unique. And Euronymous was very vocal about that. He found what we were doing interesting, and I guess that helped a lot too. So that's how we sort of slipped into becoming the weird cousins of the Norwegian black metal scene.
And that's how the DSP thing came along, that you were signed to do that album then.
So we got this in 91. We started up, didn't have a name, and sometimes during 91, Immortal came to town. They were hanging out because of some other gig. And then Demonus from Immortal, they'd just done a demo called Enslaved in Rot, which they recorded in our rehearsal room studio thing, where we recorded.
Okay, wow, okay. At the common house, or the place that you practice, the slaughterhouse, right.
And he said, you should call yourself Enslaved. And we're
Boom.
like, there we go. We have a name. We did one demo, sent it to Euronymous, and he said, you guys did spend another year. So we just thrashed, okay, this is not a demo. This is not happening. We just put the songs away, began again. And then in early 92, towards the summer, we did a recording, but we ran out of money after recording drums, vocal, bass. And it was just some vocals on the first song, Heimdallr.
Okay.
But we still we're going to hang out with Emperor, and then going to Oslo. So we brought the tapes, and then we went into Helvete and say, we haven't finished anything, but Euronymous was really keen on hearing. Put it on. So they ended up with playing the demo, and Grutle standing next to the stereo there in the shop and doing the vocals, like screaming.
While it's playing.
Yeah. And I tried to pitch in with like, we're going to put on some orchestral keyboards here, like you just need some more money, and then we'll get, more Master's Hammer vibe and all of that.
Yeah.
And by the end of those 40 minutes, he just said like, okay, guys, if you want a record deal, you got it.
Wow. That's pretty fucking cool.
It's pretty amazing. We're walking on don't want to say clouds. That's not tough. We're walking on lightning back to the bus station. After that, had to go home with the late bus to arrive home in the AM. And Grutle went and got a beer, and I got a soda. And we're like, okay, we're recording artists.
I want to ask you, I assume, based on what I know of the scene, two questions. One is, you were probably one of the youngest if not the youngest, to come out of that scene that we know of all the bands. I mean, do you know of any other guys in bands that were younger than you? Because I can't really think of any.
I'm among the youngest. Yeah, I don't know if I was the youngest, but there was some other, like Gehenna. There was a couple of guys in Gehenna on the
Okay, Hannah,
same.
right?
But when I met like other young people, they always turn out to be 1 or 2 years older. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I was hanging out with Dirty Harry, so I never got into trouble.
That's true. So you never really had to worry about anything. He was going to kick some ass no matter what in your favor after he headbutted you, right?
Exactly.
Let me ask you this, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask. It's a rhetorical question here. Do we, on the outside of this, the people that weren't there and experiencing this, do we kind of romanticize all the shit that was going on back then? Granted, you can't romanticize the fact that the churches were burned and that there was
I
a
prefer
murder
the
or three that happened. But do we, Jonas Ackerlund did the Lords of Chaos thing, and I'm not getting into whatever. I've watched it. It's moderately interesting, but not really that great to me. But do we, as the outsiders, and the whole metal scene in general, obviously the Kerrang article that kind of really blew everything up, which I used to have that magazine and I got rid of them and I could,
oh damn.
anyway, I know that's worth a lot of money now these days, but do we romanticize that whole thing in your opinion?
Yeah, but I'm not sure it's a problem. I know for me, it's I would never gone. We didn't want to participate in the original book, Lots of Chaos, because we sort of smelled the rat in a sense. That this had a sort of a sensational or some kind of weird approach that didn't. We were pretty steadfast in a principle that the art was the main principle,
Right.
and we would stand by. So we've turned down major articles in like big newspapers, international, because they wanted us to say that we are a satanic band. And when we said no, can we say that you used to be one? And we're like, no, never. We're not proper black metal. So if that's what you want, I'll give you some phone numbers. And it was, but not not to be sort of shining knights of honesty, all that stuff,
Sure.
but as a loyalty to our colleagues and friends in that scene. And we're also, for me, I'm a big fan of that music, and it's really part of my identity as a music listener and as a guitarist. So out of respect for that, and also for the fans, it meant, for the people listening to it, I don't want to give anyone an impression of this being anything else than it is. So I have to be 100% in on whatever concept is represented. It's not like these days when I can't wear my black metal t-shirts or my inverted cross or whatever to work, so I'm only doing black metal on weekends. It's like
The
it's
woke culture, I guess, is what you're kind of referencing a little bit there, because I think maybe what some of these magazines or papers or even maybe even interviews, which is why I ran a question by you and we decided to avoid that, was they're looking for some soundbite. They're looking for you to shit on the scene or the people in the scene. Things happened. Some of them
yeah,
were unfortunate and some of them maybe were somewhat necessary. I don't know, but I get that. So that's why I wanted to talk to you up front and go, yeah, let's probably avoid that one. But I appreciate your honesty on all this. But I think that's what some of the other avenues out there might be looking for, is for you
yeah,
to.
it's a lot less of that. It sort of died out at some point when it became more of a thing, when people realized that this there's the music is at the forefront. It's
Mhm.
something valuable and genuine in the art itself also. Um, so I guess that put us more on even fields when it came to the media. But it has to do with why are you doing this in the first place? It's because you're really your soul burns for something, and that's the music, your band, and the ideology behind the band. It's not just a pretend and have fun. It's a lot about having fun. We're
Sure.
goofy all the time, except from when we're on stage and working with the band. Um, but yeah, it was
Yes, it's not a fad, in other words. And I mean, I think that's what a lot of people kind of
Yeah.
look at. It's what a lot of parents look at when their kids get into music. They don't realize how maybe, and for some people it is. Some people it's just a phase. But for us, like we said, there's something far deeper about it, far more meaningful. It's kind of it's a credo for life. We have to live it.
Yes. And going back to why I said it's romanticized, but I also get it because there's a thing about this that there's a genuineness over it that makes you understand why people get attracted to that because these bands were living it.
Yeah.
And they really, meant it. So I get it. But for me personally, I never discussed Satanism or anything like the criminal aspects of it with Euronymous. He was a mentor as a guitar player. I remember like he had a bit of a master session. He came to my place. He was took his car. Him and a friend was driving around Norway visiting bands that was on his label or friends.
Right.
And he had his guitar with him, and then he taught me a lot about chord progressions and the way that he was, the thought behind his guitar playing and how he built the songs on the Mysterious, and that's still it's always going to be in my guitarist DNA and the songwriting.
That's awesome. That's really
Just
cool.
listening to the album yesterday, and it's an eternal.
De Mysterious.
The Mysterious, yeah.
Yeah, De Mysterious, right.
So for me, it's first and foremost the loss of a person I really appreciated, and sort of the sorrow, but also a bit of the insecurity of a 15, 16-year-old dude that sees. I saw this on the morning news where we live that he was
Right. I
murdered.
was going to say, was it a shock when you got the news?
So,
Yeah.
but we all knew what happened. What had happened because this was
Yeah.
an escalating thing that
Yeah.
most of us was. It was pre-internet, so it was easy to back out of in a sense, just not go there in a sense.
Right. But you were aware of the developing stuff.
Yeah, we're hearing things all the time.
Yeah.
And people were concerned, and he was even in the newspaper some weeks before, and trying to, calm things down because there was people were talking, and there's certain, there were people around the perpetrator who was like saying things and all that. It was just things got a bit out of control, so it was really a horrific moment. And then we, of course, we got pulled into the whole court thing. I guess they wanted us as character witnesses, but
you were involved in that?
They pull everyone with long hair and an inverted cross in their drawer would be
okay. Wow.
It would be like the special police, crime police of Norway would interrogate us and sort of like, I don't know what they were looking for because we pretty much all confessed except from the main dude.
Yeah, right. Was that scary for you? I mean, I imagine that was a little frightening, I would assume.
The thing itself was like way too surreal. And we still kept the focus. I guess we were all trying to continue as bands. And a telling thing is like during the trial, there was this black metal festival in Oslo because all of these bands all of a sudden had means to travel to Oslo because the state would pay for your fare to go in the court trial. Which is a bit funny, but it still happened. It was a great festival. Dissection, Gehenna, Enslaved.
Oh, wow.
All these Gorgoroth were playing. There was this incredible moment the first day during the daytime. We're all sitting around the bar there.
Yeah.
And this older dude with a mullet and a sort of an 80s glam rock jacket with these things hanging, frills hanging down.
Oh, okay.
Totally out of place, right? All these black metal people, there's guys in capes, and they're all like evil people. He comes in and he's like, starts chatting up people like, so any plans for church burnings? And everybody's like, get the fuck out. Everyone can see that you're trying to be an undercover cop.
Oh, it was a cop. Yeah,
you got the wrong genre of metal. It's not just one thing.
So he fucked that up royally.
So he just like turned around and walked out again.
That's wild, man. Have you ever told that story before?
No, I don't think I've told that too much in public. No, I just remember
awesome.
It now. Pretty awesome.
That is so cool. Well, look, we'll move on from that because I don't want to get too deep into it because we kind of had that understanding. Tell me a little bit about the role or of importance that Pitten played in recording and shaping Enslaved sound. Are there techniques or tricks that you, and that's Eric Hunven? Am I saying that right?
Can we do a short toilet break before that? because I
Sure,
really
sure,
want to
sure, sure.
focus and not sit there and think about I have to wee. Is that allowed to say on
Go for it.
internet
Go
now?
for it right now. Yep. Go for it.
Thank you, sir. I'll be right
Yes,
back.
sir. Mm-hmm. Wow, guys, you're getting some cool, cool stuff here. Very cool stuff. This is stuff that I don't know has ever been shared before. This is awesome, man. So cool. And I got a lot more coming here. Hopefully, I can keep him for another hour because we're at an hour right now. And, I kind of promised him we'd wrap up by within the second hour. So hang loose because this is fucking good stuff. What a guy. And I want to thank Brian Arkham. There's my dude, Roger. Hey, Roger, how you doing? You're over in the UK, I do believe, or maybe are you in? You might actually be over in mainland Europe. I apologize if you are, or maybe you're in Norway. I don't even know. And I apologize for that. Let's see who else is on here. Metal Ben, what's up, Metal Ben? Paul Lanford. We're gonna get to the Fire in the Mountain stuff if you're still watching. That's towards the end of the interview. I'm definitely going to talk to him. Peter, I don't know if you're still awake, but so good to see you here, man. Thanks for all you guys. It's early over here in the U.S. 10 a.m. Well, now 11 a.m. now. So, okay, here he is. He's back. Was just saying hi to
Pressure
everybody.
relief.
Very good. Very good. So getting back to Pitten, I mean, you used him from where do we go here? We've got from Viking Velde all the way up through Isa. Although there is two albums, we're gonna break out real quick to a second part because Bloodheim and Mardraum were done with Peter Takren. Can you tell me what working with Pitten did for Enslaved as a band as far as shaping the sound and the sonics?
Yeah, it was easy when we were to record our first album on Death Like Silence. Øystein Euronymous and Mayhem had already been working there, and I think when we started recording Viking Velde sometime in '93, late '93, the Mystere was pretty much all recorded, but there was a lot of Euronymous had a very particular idea, and there was this thing about the vocalist who's going to sing, all that stuff. So it took a lot of time, but it was finished a good amount of time before it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Just going to sneak in a little story. We're visiting Euronymous in before Viking Valley at not too long, like maybe the month or 2 months before his death, and he let us have like the advanced tape, which is pretty much like the last thing before the final mix, mastering of the Mysteries.
Okay.
And he said, like, okay, I'm not going to give you a copy because I don't want to risk anything, but you can have the actual, like my listening copy. I need it back in 3 hours. So we were visiting in Oslo, and all we got is Grutle's car with the stereo. So we just drove on the highway around Oslo a couple of times, listening through this instrumental mix of the Mysteries and just tried to memorize every little detail.
So you could rip off some riffs?
Of course, yeah. Made sort of a medium-sized career from actually doing that. So,
hey, every musician has done that pretty much from the beginning of time. So you're not in small company, sir. I'm just saying. Hey, look at this, Roger. And I imagine, Roger, you didn't tell me where you're from. I thought you were from the UK, but you're not with that last name.
But this guy's Norwegian, yeah.
Look at this. He saw Phobia at the Trash Festival in Bergen in '91. How fucking cool is that?
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I met a lot of people there.
And you were there too, I believe, right?
Oh yeah, we were there with Phobia. And that we also ran into a very strange character, the drummer of Red Harvest. We just remember like that guy. So he's a bit of an eccentric figure, isn't he? And then we ended up recruiting him as a drummer in 2003. That was Kato
Beckfold. Okay. Yeah. Cool. I was kidding around when I said you were there too. That's my smart ass Americanism coming out.
I'm just trying to pretend I wasn't there, like we talked about this.
That's right. That's right. This whole interview actually isn't actually happening. It's kind of So Pitten again.
We're all part of John Malkowich's subconsciousness.
Right. So Pitten, how important is he in developing this sound that you're starting to develop?
Extremely important. He had Grieghallen up and running by then, yeah, and Mame was his major thing. Emperor had already recorded their their debut album. Immortal had a
Mm-hmm.
full moon diabolical full moon mysticism.
Mysticism, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was the place to go. There was like no doubt about it. We got a budget and went there. And Pitten, he was integral in his attitude. We had a talk at Beyond the Gates last year, 22, with Pitten about the developing of the sound. And it turned out during this talk, he verbalized a lot of his the feeling that you had how he worked. He wasn't interested in producing in the sense that's known now, right? Where you go in and weed out whatever and try and shape anything
Right.
into whatever the producer wants. He saw himself as a bit of an that he wanted to amplify what was there. And I think that explains the extreme variety. We're talking about that with some of the people that went to the talk, and afterwards, I was supposed to be his sidekick at one of these tours of Grieghallen that they gave of the old studios. But I just after 1 minute, I'm like, no, I'm going to be in the audience, Pitten. I'm not going to. There's no way I'm going to stand next to you on this thing.
Right.
You're the man.
You don't want to upstage this guy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Total legend.
So he's if I hear you correctly, you use the word amplify. I think maybe in English for facilitate, he might be the facilitator of this, what you guys are developing. He's just he's maybe sanding off the rough edges, cleaning up some of the, the
not
things
even that.
Yeah.
If people want, he would take, we're saying like, we want this and this sound, and he would experiment. Like on Vikkelige Valley, we would record in some of the hallways, because it's a really big building, Grieghallen. If you look at from the air, it's shaped like a big piano. There's various stories. There's a big basement to it. That was where the studio was to begin with, and he was working there, recording the classical orchestra in the main hall, because that would be broadcasted on radio, right, weekly, their concert. And then he would work on his studio, which was, I guess, part of his payment or something that he had that he gave him a place in the basement to record. And it was they used all of it, like the Mysteries. We heard this drum sound. It's like, it's so huge, right? The reverb, and it turned out the way that he to actualize and facilitate Euronymous' vision of that drum sound. They snuck into the main hall where the orchestra weren't allowed to do it, but still did it. Like after they went home at 9,
right.
10 o'clock, they started moving the drum kit and everything in there. And they would record in secret all through the night. And he put up microphones and these walls and all kinds of stuff to get like the reverb of a big classical hall.
Right.
For it. And that's, he would stop at nothing. I remember a story. Some guy said, like, to get it necro enough, he wanted to have buckets instead of toms.
Like plastic pails?
Yeah, like some crappy.
Yeah.
And Pittman didn't think for 2 seconds. He's like, okay, let's try that. It sounded like shit in the wrong way, so they didn't go through with it. But that's Pittman. He would find ventilation systems, and we would make up that and try and make wind sounds and things like that. He was just all over the place, and just really, really interested. He was his background was as a pop musician. He was quite well known in Norway, but at this point he was, as he said himself, he was so fed up with this hit making sort of like polishing of sound, that when the first band, the kids from one of his old friends from school, that was Old Funeral actually, and he said, like, this guy, he's got a studio, maybe you guys can record there. and he had never heard it before, anything like that. And they came with their death metal, death thrash, and he was just like, "Yes, finally, some people who don't give a fuck," you know. So
Right. This is a Bath, right? This is a Bath band, right?
that's his all band, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And that's how the whole thing started. And when we got the he like the professionality and respect he had for our art, and I think this is why a lot of these bands, you know, it's pompous. It's a lot of it's pretentious, you know. I'm not gonna. I still do that, you know, in the music. You have to allow. That's the beauty of metal.
Oh,
Don't be
yeah.
afraid of sort of. Okay, you're a guy who lives in a house in a city, you know, or a village or whatever. But why can't you just have grandiose ideas? You're allowed to do
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a classical violinist to do that kind of stuff. Um,
So
so
Pitton was ready and willing to ride along on the journey and kind of push you guys or help you guys achieve the sounds you wanted to hear.
exactly.
Okay. Wow. Why though, then did you go with Peter Tägtgren on Bloodheim and Mardraum then?
It was we want. I think both the music on Bloodhound. It was we needed some kind of restart at that point. After '95, when you know, it was amiable, we wanted to go in a direction with the music. Trim wanted to he wanted to push the limits of you know of the fast. He was I think he was yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah, he was more attracted to what bands like especially Emperor. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess some of the other fast ones, what they were up to, more technical. While we were still young guys, but a little bit of the old guy, like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. Like you should have, because these were bands we were still really big fans of, even though we're going into this new extreme metal thing, and we wanted to incorporate that, and just didn't really feel that we're going in the same direction. So we're like, okay, let's just you know split ways here, and we'll find a new drummer, and I'm sure you'll find a new band because people were raving, you know, about this his drumming,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
we
Right.
like. So after 2 days, our friend Samoth from Emperor calls me and he says, like, "Would you guys be upset if I heard you Trim quit?" And he's exactly what we need at that time. They lost their drummer, Faust.
Faust. Yeah.
Um, and then we're like, no, that's fucking fantastic, you know, love the guy, and him
But
getting a
this
new
is
band.
pre-Eld though, right? This is
Yeah,
Eld, pre-Eld, right? So we've gotten through Frost and Viking, which we can't talk about every album because I'll keep you here for seven. I could talk to you about every album, but I'll keep you here for like 22 hours, and that's not going to work. Got a lot of potty breaks in there if that's the case. So, so we're at Eld, and you're bringing in now. Is it Dag?
no, it's Harold.
Harold. That's right. Right. Okay.
He was a thrash metal guy, and he was in because at this we it took some extra time also because in '96 we both me and Grutle moved to Bergen, because yeah, I guess we're done with all the schooling, and I was having a quick try at the university, and he was finishing his whatever thing he was studying, and then you know, no, he was actually living one more year in Haugesund, and then it meant that we had to travel further to rehearse, and we had a few guys helped us out playing drums. But then Grutle met this guy Harald who was playing some thrashy stuff, more prog metal things he was interested in. He listened to what we had done. He thought it was like really interesting, but yeah, black metal was something completely new to him. But we thought like that's a great start. We want to. We were still like curious where do we want to take Enslaved. So we did Eld, but then you know some health issues and things happened in Harald's life, so he had to leave the band after one album, which felt like a bummer for all of us. We got a lot of shit for the album, like, but funnily enough, some of it's and that's the beauty of being in an old band. We've seen where people have said like put it on the top 10 of the '90s albums, and that was the same magazines who gave it like 1 out of 10, and it's like.
Nah, give me 793 all day because that song, in my opinion, is where the progressive element of Enslaved started. That's where I hear the Rush, I hear the Floyd, I hear the dynamics beginning of, and it sounds like to me what you just said was you wanted to incorporate some of those classic rock bands. Oh no, that terrible word, classic rock, but let's fuck that, man. We all love classic rock.
Oh yeah.
And even the black metal, the worst, most nihilistic black metal dude probably listens to, you know, Achilles' Last Stand and goes, man, that's a killer track. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, you're bringing that on, and actually, Achilles' Last Stand is what that song reminds me. 793 reminds me a lot of Achilles' Last Stand.
Oh,
There's
that's
just
cool.
that vibe is there. You know what I mean?
Fantastic. I love that.
So I love that album. But then you go and Harold leaves, and you do this savage as fuck album. Bloodheim is just, it's savage, dude. It's just the most, to me, it's the most black metal savage album you guys have ever done. It's just brutal.
Absolutely.
But you bring in a new guy. You bring in two new guys. You bring in Kronheim, Lloyd Kronheim, and help me out.
A pair, a Dirge rep.
Right. There's rep. So then you go to work with Peter Tägtgren. Was that the reason? Because you wanted to do this more savage sort of album and wanted to try or experiment outside of Pitten, or what was the?
Yeah, it was. I think the whole situation of having started something with Alan and sort of going back to square one with him going out of the band, and then we, those guys, Per and Roy, as is Kronheim's first name, like good friends of ours, from slightly different scenes. You know, Dirge had a thing for many years with Gehenna, which he had left by that time, and Roy Kronheim is a well-known rockabilly and rock guitarist from Bergen. From some pretty good, but more pop rock, radio-oriented bands. But he was really, musically interested in all kinds of stuff. So they both said yes to help us out to do some live shows in '98, and it was just like a good vibe around it, and it was never intended to be the Ivar and Grutle show. So we said, why don't you just be members of the band and let's be a unit again. That's what we always wanted. So we had a great time, and I think Bloodhound was to really like I feel like it was almost like a last check before we sort of went and departed more heavily from our starting point as a black metal only inspired
roots, yeah. I agree,
and
it's a fantastic album, but it's so savage. It's one of those albums that you kind of, you put it on, you listen to it, and you go, and then you go, okay, I got my fix of that for a little while. And I love all, I love extreme metal, but that album is just intense.
It is very intense. But we loved where Peter was recommended through. I think it came both from label and other friends. He's a fantastic guy, and he's later on done. Yeah, we know what he's done with like Immortal or Demu and what he's meant for these bands. But most importantly, he's just a fantastic guy. And his studio is great. And it really, when we were going for this sort of brutalistic sound on Broham, it seemed appropriate, and we wanted to experiment a little bit. So we did that, and after that, when we started working on the Mardraum things, we decided to do one more because we really just enjoyed the whole atmosphere of working with Peter. But we had a bit of a discussion within the band. Shouldn't we just like go for it? Let's just disintegrate and see what happens. Disintegrate and sort of mix with any kind of impulse or where we want the band to go. We didn't think about anything had to do with success. Nobody thought about that. It was never discussed. I remember one discussion with some bands in '93, '94, like, what if a band has a huge commercial success, like people were predicting Mayhem would have with the Mysteries or Dark Throne with the Blaze and Sky? Would that make them less genuine? And somebody said, no, that's beyond their control. It's being released. So I guess it's good. Okay, and then we just
So
went
it's
back
so
to
it's the
discussing.
whole sellout thing
Yeah,
comes up, a poser thing comes up, but does that make them a poser band if they suddenly put out something that everybody accepts?
exactly. And this conclusion was just like that's not relevant
Yeah.
because the music, everything is made like detached from that whole thing. What happens happens. And on the other hand, if it means go, bigger shows, it wasn't relevant for the discussion. And I think that made it easy for us to make that choice. Okay, let's just continue mission statement, make our own favorite music, performing it with our best friends. And we so then I guess Mardraum started, and more of these little psychedelic and proggy elements crept in.
Yep. That my question then there again, great segue. Around Mardraum and Monumension, there was this considerable shift in the style, the material you guys were writing became more progressive. Although I think VV and I'm going to just do it that way. Viking Liger Veldi and Frost and Eld all had progressive elements to them, specifically Eld. It just became much more pronounced on Mardraum and Monumension, which is my entry into Enslaved. I became aware of you guys with
That's cool.
Monumension, and I fucking love that album. It's here. I love it. It's that and East and Below the Lights always fight between which one I'm gonna like the most. Doesn't mean I don't like the current stuff. It just means you know how it is when you come in at a certain point with a band, you develop a an attachment emotionally and even physically to that particular era of a band. You know, we talked about this in our private conversation when I asked you about, what's your favorite Rush album? Hemispheres was my entry, and it's like every time I go, I love all the Rush albums for the most part, but man, when I want to hear Rush, I want to hear Farewell to Kings, Hemispheres, Power Windows, Moving Pictures. That's my shit. It doesn't mean any of the newer stuff is less valid. It just means that's where I'm coming from. And so, Monumension, what outside influences do you recall really hitting you around the time of Mardraum? And I think you kind of alluded to some of them, classic rock, but anything specific that jumps out at you?
Yeah, the bands that I mentioned were sort of becoming more prominent, especially Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Rush, but also at the time of Eldon Bloodham, King Crimson appeared on the scene, and
Mm,
that really changed up quite a bit and opened. And I guess that led into more exploration of the scene from those days. Things like Genesis and Yes.
yes, Close to the Edge. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Relayer.
And it was just, and even more of the Scandinavian prog rock scene, the Swedish prog bands and so on, like Englago, Anekdoten,
Oh, Anecdote. What a credible band. And Focus.
Focus, yeah. and
Yeah.
and also two American bands was really important at the time. I think it was in '97 was after Eld. I saw, or '98. Again, Grutle would correct me, but I went and saw on my own, saw the poster for the Swans, and I didn't know this band, but I
Oh,
remembered Einar from Beyond Dawn, the band. We also played in Virus up until recently. He was really into, let's say, things outside of extreme metal and recommending all kinds of stuff. And I remembered him and someone else had mentioned the Swans, and it said like the final tour they were doing soundtracks for the blind.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
went and saw this show for like 3 hours, and I was in shock.
yeah.
I think I still am. It's just like the expressiveness and this other, like I realized that there's sort of an for me unknown world of expressing atmospheres and emotions. Like heaviness isn't just down-tuned guitars and lyrics about war and evil stuff. There's also what the Swans were doing with this incredibly gloomy uh, New York sort of
There's
horror.
a there's a metaphysical heaviness that they
Yes,
bring.
and it just and then pretty soon after, someone handed me a Neurosis album,
Ah,
Times of Grace,
yes.
Through Silver and Blood, and that also made me really open my eyes to the whole thing of the more of dynamics and more of finding alternative ways of expressions.
Yeah, I've seen Neurosis, one of my top 5 bands, and I've seen them probably close to a dozen times, and I never am quite prepared for the heaviness of the doorway. It's just it's just it goes seeing Neurosis is a religious experience. It almost is like you're worshiping at the church of volume, but in a controlled, almost weaponized way. It's coming at you in ways that you can't envision your body take. And a Sun is also kind of that way too,
Mm.
especially when they have Attila with them. I only seen him once, but I got to tell you that I walked out of there kind of feeling like I was high for hours afterwards because, and I wasn't high. I hadn't even drank. I was just like the onslaught of intensity and the way the sound moved through my body was kind of scary actually. Like I was having out of body experiences while I was listening to. I was like I kept feeling like I was floating. Could have been that there was so much smoke you can't see in front of you, but yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. The Swans are the Sun takes a lot from the Swans in my opinion.
Mm. We all should.
Yeah. So
Mm.
the next 3 albums below one last question on to go back to Monumension real quick. Like I said, it might be my favorite album by you guys, and I feel like you had kind of left the traditional black metal influences behind by that album in a lot of ways. They were still there, but they weren't there. They weren't. They were a different. They were a different sort of thing.
I
Okay.
think it became more of the ground, like the roots in a sense, and
Right.
not necessarily the framework so much anymore.
Excellent way to put it. There was the heft was still there, but it wasn't. You weren't relying on any of the typical sort of, I guess, tropes, if you will, for lack of a better word. I mean, it is what the go-to moves, I guess you would be.
Mm.
The tremolo picking changed, all of it kind of changed. I mean, it really starts with Convoys to Nothingness. I mean, probably my favorite, all-time favorite Enslaved song. That song just blows my fucking mind every time I hear it. It's like I hear something new in that album in Monumension every time I listen to it.
Awesome.
I got to tell you, is there any memories that stand out from that period as far as writing, recording, and touring? And talk a tiny little bit about probably my favorite song off that album is Hollow Man. There's something about that song that is just so moving emotionally and spiritually. It's just, and that was a collaboration with, I'm going to get his first name terribly wrong.
Trygve?
Try, okay. Yeah, I'm not even going to try Matheson.
Yeah.
um, that song is so beautiful. And so, can you talk a little bit about that period?
Yeah. We'd come back from Mardraum, and we felt really both really feeling good about our direction that we made this choice. And it felt good to incorporate more of these influences and our, I would say, musical personalities. The band felt, yeah, it really had a strong feeling, and we Metal Maniacs, hey. And it was a really good time for the band creative. We wrote Monumension and got in touch with Pitten, and to do some records. We felt like, okay, this material is really appropriate for his approach. More experimental stuff, using some like the B3 Hammond organ and that kind of stuff from our heroes. Include that in the music. It was really a productive, and also there was this bit of a bubble. We had some feedback. There was no internet
Of
in
course.
that sense. That wasn't popularized
Right.
quite yet. But we met some people at the local store who said, like, "I'm so disappointed in what you did with Mardraum. It's like I'm never going to listen to you again." I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
and for some weird reason that kind of felt good. It's like, okay, the chains are off, gloves are off, and we're just going to do our thing and if you only like Frost, you're still as a valuable fan as anyone else. That annoyed a few people that we didn't get pissed off. We still appreciate people who only like, if you just want to like one album or all of them, it doesn't matter. You're still
Right.
still a fan. It's just time.
Right.
Time is not that relevant. So we had a blast recording that. Some of it in the aftermath. It's one of the albums that took me a while to really appreciate all of it, because sometimes it feels like we were, the image I had is like 1 foot ashore and one on the boat, and sometimes we would lose focus and just fall into the water because you took it a bit too far too early. We should have worked a little bit more, and it's the typical, what do you call it, overconfidence of metal musicians, is that you can step into other genres and master that sort of.
Okay,
because
gotcha.
we did metal sort of, but it also made us realize we have to work on those dynamics and the prog rock elements and all that stuff. That's a reason why these bands were also going at it for 10, 15, 20 years before they made the most complicated transitions, dynamic wise and so on. So it was, but in time I've realized that it was really a necessary album for the entire development later. And as you say, the Hollow Inside, we had a friendship. We still have a very good friendship with Trygve. He's a great guy. He was first a central figure in the Norwegian punk scene, late 70s, early 80s. And then he started what the originators of Viking based sound. They call it Norse jazz funk. That was sort of a punkish fuck off to the establishment, I guess. But it was just like really sort of more pop rock, almost like new wave. Some of it. If you haven't heard it, you got to check it out.
I haven't. You'll have to send me a link to it then, so I know what to look for.
It's
But
just
so
amazing.
was he the leader of a band? Was the band? He had a band or no? Okay, what was
He
the
was the
band's
front
name?
figure of this band, Ymstammen, YM dash STAMMEN, like the tribe of Ym, the first being in Norse mythology.
Okay, you'll have
They
to
had
send that to me. I'll never remember that.
Senate, legendary band, just fantastic. They just did a one-off at Midgårdsblot, the Norwegian festival, and it was just it's just amazing. And there's so many good stories. They were really they mean it. They really have the ideology seeping through the whole concept. And it's this story about somebody tipping them off that somebody seeing their guitarist going to Catholic mass, and eventually confronting him and confessing, like in secret, that he's a Catholic, and they kick him out of the band.
Jeez. Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. But they're a punk band. They're not a black metal band, though.
They turn into they're very serious about this whole Norse mythology and also,
Okay, gotcha.
So for us to hook up with him, such a character, and we felt such a connection at this point. There wasn't on other bands. I think in 97, 98, we heard at some festivals, German festivals, this other band, AM EST.
Oh yeah,
were playing. And somebody said, you guys should talk to them because they seem to have the same lyrics, but they sound more like death metal. And so there was great guys, and since became our friends, far more successful, but sort of same foundation. But there were two bands at these huge metal festivals that had sort of the Viking things, and the rest would just engage in whatever they were doing. And nowadays it's the other way around. You have two bands that's not the Viking related band. So yeah, things change.
Gavin has a question here. Were your fellow countrymen Ved Wens End and Dodomsgard influences at all? Dodomsgard was okay.
Absolutely, that's two of my favorite bands, and if you add Virus to that, there's those are the bands I think are my favorites when it comes to this psychedelic sort of the Norse, maybe the Norse black metalish answer to Voivod. Who knows? Because like really using disharmonics and what you would call a fucked up songwriting.
Yeah, right. Were you a
I
big
love,
Voivod fan?
yeah, big time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the most unique sounding metal band of certainly the most unique that kind of rose above that isn't sort of super underground. I mean, there's just such they're
It's
Voivod.
fantastic.
Nobody sounds like them, and nobody, Piggy was just, Piggy's Piggy, man, and only one guy has managed to be like Piggy, and that is not be like, but I mean, Dan was my first interview. What a great guy, but just he saved that band in a lot of ways, I believe. I really do. He brought him back. Let's put it that way. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
I want to move you on because I'm chewing into your time big time here. Can you tell me a little bit about why Roy left the band, or was he let go, or how? You don't want to get into that?
Yeah, it was amiable solution. I think there was things. Both him and Dirge left on good terms in a sense, because I mentioned this, that we really felt energized after, especially Mardraum and Monumension, that we had a sense of direction, and that also meant that we really wanted to tour more. We wanted to
Okay.
work more as a band, work harder. Realizing like this whole education thing is probably not gonna take us anywhere anyways. That's
Right.
as metal as we want it to be. So let's go for the band. And I think they both had, they wanted to prioritize other things in their lives.
Now, are you working a day job during any of this stuff, or are you able to live off of what you got going on with Enslaved by that time, or no?
I was still doing actually night jobs. I was working,
Okay.
I did many different things. I was a driver for a lab, dental lab sometimes. I was driving around this van with the tiny teeth and whatnot around the area of Bergen. I worked in a record store here in town,
Okay.
Apollo, for a while, which was really cool. And then I started 2000. I think it was after Below the Lights. I started working night shifts um, at the ward for the criminally insane here in Bergen, which was
Oh, wow.
a special time, but also gave a lot of time for songwriting.
Okay.
And it was after that, after Isa, between Isa and Rune, that I pretty much did this full time. Yeah,
You were able to make a living out of it then.
yeah, but it's never been the principal thing. We still have things outside the bands.
Sure.
Two of the guys
Sure.
run studios. I have a company that builds stages. I'm involved in the record company. It's never, you never
Right.
say a decision is never guided by sort of a career choice in
Right.
that sense.
Well, no, that's clear. I mean, your vision for the band has always been the road less traveled, so to speak, because you weren't becoming a pop band. You weren't becoming this polished pop band where you could become, a performer or an entertainer. This was always about the music, the creative muse, the real reason
Yeah,
to become a rocker metal guy. You don't do, maybe in the 70s you did this shit because it could become a career. You don't do it these days for that because it's not, there's too many bands. The record industry is pretty much dead for the most part. And yes, there are ways to create income that are more direct, like Bandcamp and things like that. But this isn't, you do this because it's a calling. It's not because
yeah.
it's a 9 to 5 thing. It's just not that way, right?
It's like one of the albums that a Norwegian prog rock band called Motorcycle. They have an album
Oh,
called.
yeah.
They have heavy metal is a pose, hard rock is a lifestyle.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly right.
That's pretty rich coming from a prog rock band, but it's still a good one.
It's perfectly apropos though. So the next three albums, Below the Lights, Issa Rune, are kind of, in my opinion, the triple threat that gained you kind of worldwide notoriety and worldwide success, if we will, after we
Yeah,
just
I
said
agree.
you can't really make a living from it, but they're what brought you into the forefront of the world at large. Do you have a favorite of those three at all? I know they're like children, so maybe that's an unfair question.
Yeah, it's impossible. It also changes from period to period. I have had long periods where Ruin was a really a strong go-to album.
That's good enough. I don't want to make you stress over it. Below the Lights saw the addition of Herbert Larson and
Arvia.
Arva Isdale, who created probably the longest stretch of personal stability as far as personnel in the band until Larson left after In Times. Can you speak to that continuity and how it affected you creatively? Because honestly, I would contend that this period of the band has led to some of your best and most consistent songwriting. Is that too complicated a question, or do you?
No, I totally agree. It was really a productive and a really great time in the band. Once again, we had sort of aligned the ambitions, and I think that's why we've had such stable lineups. And we've had quite a few changes, nothing Spinal Tap-ish, but
Right.
quite stable. But but sometimes it can seem different but then you have to remember we've been around for 30 years. So that started a very long period. Those from the beginning to the end, just fantastic. And this again, even though Haban left the band because he wanted to prioritize other things again in life, that's something we respect. And no departure from the band has ever been about quarreling or talking shit or anything like that. It's just like people have developments in their lives, and you can respect that. And I think it felt really rewarding for us. This, as I said, motivation was really high, that we took this direction of the band, and being joined by musicians on the level of Icedale and Arve and Haban and Kate on drums gave us a professionality and sort of a backbone that allowed me and Grutle to develop even more of the visions that I guess we saw as Enslaved.
Yeah, and I mean that I think the way you speak to that is those guys leveled you up even further than you already leveled up at that point.
Yeah.
And it really is, it's telling in the quality of the work, because I say this often when I talk about, and again, I hate to use the black metal term, but just to put you in that group of bands that came out of that genre, you're my favorite by far. I mean, it's light years to be honest with you. But
wow, thank you.
But I think the biggest reason is not because some of those other bands haven't put out incredibly dynamic and important works. The difference, I think, with Enslaved is that you guys have put out, I would say Emperor is close. And the reason I say that is because the quality of their work over 4 albums is fucking amazing. However, it's only 4 albums. You guys have 16 albums, and it's been consistent. Number one is consistent, and it's never ever mediocre. Some are better than others, I'm not going to lie, but it's never mediocre. And I can't think, even Rush, my favorite band in the whole entire planet, will always be my favorite band, has put out 1 or 2 kind of mediocre albums, and you guys just haven't done that. Now there's still hope for the future, but I mean,
yes, we could.
We could. Axioma, real quick, remains a fan favorite with some of Enslaved's proggiest but most accessible songs to that point. This came on the heels of touring with Opeth in the U.S., which was my first time seeing you up at Starland Ballroom in New Jersey, in fact.
Right.
2009. What's that?
2009?
2009, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you opened, according to you, or at least what I saw on Wikipedia, this opened the band to a wider audience, yet Wikipedia says you only sold about 1,400 copies in the U.S. that first week of Axioma, which blows my mind that it wasn't 10, 20, 30 times that, and I imagine it probably does yours as well. But are you aware of which are, say, your top 3 selling albums? Do you have any idea? Because I talk to a lot of artists, and they're like, I have no fucking clue how much shit sold, Yeah,
that's a tough one. I know Frost is going to be up there because everyone who gets into the band goes back and gets that one. So that's up there. I would guess Frost and no Ritier also, because it's all this is in a transition from physical more towards a digital.
That's a good
That
point.
makes it even more confusing.
Yeah.
But Frost and Ritier is probably my best guess.
Any specific memories about writing and recording Axioma, real quick?
Yeah, it was a great time. We set up a studio. That was the first time we did this collaboration with Jens Bogren, mixing the album.
Right.
But by this time, we had two sort of semi-professional studios in the band, mine and Icedale's. So we
Did you do that at Fascination or only the mix there?
Only mix, yeah.
Only mix. Okay, all right.
But we recorded it in Bergen, and Herban by that time was a pretty skilled technician, so he would facilitate the recordings, and also in Icedale studio. And this is also the first time we worked with Ivar Sunday, who's now a drummer. He would do the vocal production with Grutle, and that sort of that duo of producing and recording things by herself and then bringing it to Jens turned out to be quite dynamite. So that's really a highlight, I have to say. Really exciting, working out, experimenting with mic placement and making all those calls ourselves. It was really really cool.
Do you use, when you're doing a lot of like the keyboard stuff, are you using a lot of soft synths? Are you using, I mean, you can't really do that. Well, I guess you can with Mellotrons now. They probably have incredible plugins that are just like it. But do you prefer to use, because I've seen your studio, or well, I've seen you in your studio at your home, I guess it is, where you've got all your Kemper and your various different keyboards and whatnot. I mean, do you use a lot of MIDI triggered stuff, or do you do a lot of real keyboard work?
It's a good mix. When it comes to the studio, Håkon, he does, he prefers, he's using real organs and pianos and all that stuff. And we have, between us in the band, we have three Mellotrons, but like newer editions, the ones that are made by Mellotron in the later years.
Okay.
But we use some real ones on some of the recordings when we've been lucky to borrow. So it's I don't really, if it achieves the sound, then I'm happy with it. Some of the psychedelic stuff is a mix of plugins that I use, but also I got some old Rolands from the 70s, the SH1, the SH100, and there's a Moog that I use quite a lot for sequencing and so on.
You have a full Moog or the mini Moog, or?
No, it's the Mother 32. It's
okay.
It's more my age. So yeah.
Which is still young, I might add.
Yes.
For an old guy right here.
Not necessarily purist when it comes to that, but we gravitate, especially when it comes to recording, towards finding, because they are more quirky.
Right.
These old things, and all of a sudden they will act up and do something weird.
Yeah.
That's normally great for a studio session.
Right. Touching on the new album. Again, we can't touch on everything because we're getting really deep in here. Heimdall, which comes out 3/20 or 3.
That will have to do part 2, man.
Okay. Do you want to do a new thing then? You want to end it here, or do you want to do a part 2?
Let's do part 2.
So do that?
So you don't have to skip and rush and go all those years ahead, man.
Okay. Because I do. Would you like to go back and we can talk about some of the other recordings like Ritier and?
Yeah, sure. Then we can go chronological if that's good with you.
Yeah, it's fantastic with me. I'd love to do that. Because I've got stuff in here about Heimdall already, and then I've got stuff about. You're gonna have to help me out with the pronunciation.
Skootsja and Hugshaw. Yeah,
both those, which are fucking amazing, man. And I must admit to you, I knew about them, but I had not checked them out until yesterday.
Awesome.
Fucking mind blown, dude. Mind blown. The 10-minute track on Skootsja.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce the title. Something about beginning and ending.
Yeah.
Just incredible. And then I've got stuff on Bard Spec, which I knew about too and only listened to a couple days ago. And I have to say, it might be my favorite thing you've ever done. It's so amazing.
This goes for part 2, man.
I'm an old Tangerine Dream nut, so let me show you something real quick and we'll wrap up. I snoozed like an idiot on the first part, but I was not going to snooze on this one.
Oh boy.
So that's the 10 disc
Oh, shit.
80 to 83 Pilots of the Purple Twilight with the legit, real, full soundtrack to The Keep.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we got to talk a little bit about this stuff because this, I think, is probably near and dear to your heart to a degree, I would
Oh,
assume.
absolutely.
I missed out on the 18 disc In Search of Hades box set. And so I was like, yeah, I'm not snoozing on this one because that first box set's going for like $5, and I just can't. Yeah, I can't with my
It's
medical situation. I can't do that. So, Fire in the Mountains. We got to talk about Fire in the Mountains too, and Stephen Wilson. We got to talk about Stephen Wilson because I happen to know Steve pretty well.
all right.
I did a lot of work for Porcupine Tree back in the way back days, back in 99 through 2009, 2010 days. In fact, if you look at my channel, I just did an extensive interview with Colin Edwin, the
Awesome.
original bass player. So you let
We
me
got
know
our
what
work cut out for us.
what's that?
We got our work cut out for us.
We
for
do. I
part
hope you've enjoyed at least part one to this
two.
point.
It's been great. This is why I want to
Um,
continue to do it properly.
So you let me know. You've got my email address, and
Yeah.
I'll zip my number over to you too in case you want that. And you let me know when you want to go forward because I'll put some more questions together on the albums that we did kind of skip because I skipped Frost and I didn't mean to because I love Frost obviously, but and
That's
in fact the last time I saw you was when you performed Frost in its entirety
all
at
right.
Decibel Fest show down in Philly, and mind blown, of course. So we'll do that, and I can't thank you enough, first of all, and
My
second of
point, man.
all, thanks again to Austin for setting up such a cool thing. And you're just a super swell dude. And I'm usually
Thank you,
very
Steve.
nervous when I meet. I get nervous right before I go live. I had no nerves with you. I felt like, man, this guy and I we're kindred spirits. We're gonna vibe really well, and all's gonna go well. Let me know when you can do part two. The sooner the better. Just knowing that I do have
Yep.
a
It will be
situation
soon. It will
I'm
be
dealing
soon.
with. All right,
You got
man.
the word. Thanks, man.
Fantastic. Talk to you soon. Potty
See
break,
you
right?
soon.
Potty
Yep.
break.
Bye, break.
All
Always.
right, brother. Talk to you, man. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Nope. Wow. How fucking cool was that, huh? How fucking cool was that? Part two, boys and girls. Part two's coming up. And we're gonna do that, I would imagine, pretty soon. What an amazing guy, what amazing stories, some of which one in particular probably was never heard elsewhere by anyone else. So again, huge hails and thanks go out to Austin Lunn for this. Just without him, it wouldn't have happened. He made this happen. Yeah, so I'm working on part two. It's off. I got to start formulating questions. Before we go, on Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, another killer interview coming your way. Greg Chandler from Esoteric. Yes, the Esoteric from the United Kingdom. Greg will be joining me for an extensive interview regarding the beginnings, the history of Esoteric, and we're going to probably talk about the albums as well. You guys know, man, I don't fuck around. I go deep and hard, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it'll continue to be. Thanks to Ben, Phil, Peter, Roger. Who else do we have in here? Gavin, thank you very much for your compliment above, man. Devin, fuck you. Just kidding. Who else? I think that might have been it. You guys were all in here. Brian again. You guys fucking rule. You guys are awesome. Paul Lanford. Paul, we'll get to your question if you're tuning in late. We'll get to your question about Fire in the Mountains very, very soon in part two because there will be a part two and it's gonna be fucking epic. Just like part one was. It might even be more epicer. We're gonna try to be more epic. So you guys chill. I'm gonna take a break for a couple days from doing all this stuff, and I've had some stuff going on this week, and I'm gonna try to relax and and rest up and prepare for part 2 because you guys rule and Ivar rules. All right. Yeah, man, you just missed it, Nick. You missed it. But here's the good news, Nick. Part 2 coming up soon. We've already got part 1, which is almost 2 hours long. There will be a part 2 because I believe Ivar enjoyed that quite a bit. And there's some stories you will not want to miss. Go back and listen to them. Thanks again to Ivar, and thanks again for the 9 millionth time to Austin Lunn. You guys are beautiful. I'll catch you later. All right. You missed it. Yeah, Marty, you missed it. Part 2. Part 2 is coming up. That was only part 1. And part 2 is coming up by request from Ivar. We will be doing a part 2 soon, very, very soon. So, Marty, please make sure that Austin knows that I thank him profusely for this because it wouldn't have happened without him. And I also sent him the link, and I thanked him there, but I didn't hear from him back. So, I know he doesn't typically answer his phone right away, but let him know that he is the man that was responsible for making this happen. And I shall talk to you guys later. I'm going to cut out and go get a bite to eat and rest up after my procedures yesterday. So peace out.